So, okay, we have quorum, so we can get started with tonight. So welcome everybody to today's Finance Committee meeting on May 24th at 6:02 p.m. On the agenda tonight, we don't have a whole lot. We have acceptance of minutes from 5:10. We have interviews with candidates those candidates being Michael Bennett, Martha Hall, and Michael O'Brien. We have a possible discussion on reorganization. We'll have the discussion whether or not we do it tonight or if we wait to another meeting, which I assume will that'll get discussed when we take up calendar later tonight. Then correspondence, public participation. And then at 6:45 on the agenda is a meeting with representatives from Blakeman, Bobrovsky, and Haverty on the zoning bylaw review. And then, of course, as things come up, we can address those as well. So the first thing I'd like to do is we've got the minutes that Linda put together from 5:10, which she sent out back, I know it's back last week. Yeah, it was like the 14th of March. So if somebody would like to make a motion to accept the meetings from 5:10.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay, then we'll do a roll call vote then. Joe?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
And myself is yes. So it takes care of the roll call of the meeting minutes. So we have a number of interviews to do tonight. I do see that Michael Bennett is online. I don't know what the order was, Linda. Do we have a specific order?
Yep. So I did the, they're coming on just exactly as it is on the agenda. So Michael,
Perfect.
Martha, Michael.
Okay, I just didn't want to
Split up the
skip
Michaels for you.
Great. I just didn't want to skip if we had somebody else scheduled for 6 o'clock or something like that. So Michael, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Good, good, good. So I understand that you've submitted a talent bank form to join the finance committee. So I just wanted to ask you a few questions and let other people ask you some questions. So my first question is what attracted you to the finance committee?
I just thought it would be an interesting group to find out more about what goes on in the town and how the town functions. Get a little more intimate with the town, really.
Okay. Can you give us a little bit about your background? Not that it really
Sure.
matters, but
No,
we've got a nice diversity. Like we've got like somebody's people like HR, we've got contractors. So it's nice to see what the diversity of the board
Absolutely,
is.
absolutely. My background is in IT.
Oh, good.
I spent about 40 years working in the IT field, from low tech all the way up to director of technology. I did some K to 12. I did colleges and universities. So it was pretty interesting and very challenging.
So you can relate to my present exhaustion.
Yes, sir. I certainly can. I've had those 100-hour weeks.
I know it gets a little, as you get older though, that's like those days that we can't do that anymore.
Harder to do.
Yeah. So there's so I'd like to open it up. Again, let me introduce myself first. I'm Frederick McGovern, currently the chairman of the finance committee for another 3 weeks, and then we'll do a reorganization after we get new board members and that sort of stuff. So I've been with the finance committee almost 3 years now. Joe, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, Michael, I'm Joe Vetrano. I've been on the finance committee for a few months now, maybe 4 months, I think it's been since I got sworn in, March maybe. Same as yourself, just thought I come from not a finance background per se, but I'm in the construction industry and do a senior purchaser for a large construction company. So I'm dealing with budgets and numbers all day, and as well as the construction end of things. So I thought I was just as interested to learn about the town and see how the money's getting spent.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Cheryl?
I've been on the finance committee about 3 years, retired from Massasoit Community College. Did you go to Massasoit Community College?
Well, I did. I
worked
worked there as well as being a student there. Yes.
Do you remember me?
I do. I do.
I got involved because I also wanted to be, kind of invested to see how we're spending our tax dollars. And being a retired person, naturally enough, I'm on a fixed income, so I'm truly involved in how they're spending my tax dollars.
I understand that.
Okay, Drew, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Drew. I've been on the finance committee for about 2 years, I think.
Yep.
I joined, one of my majors in school was in finance. I did 2 internships in finance, so it seemed interesting to me. My dad's on, I think, he's on one of the library commissions, and then the second reason I joined was, I have environmental interests, like how there's like Tesla and like electric cars and things. And it seems like getting involved in government is like one way to work on that, which I think has been, so it's going, it's working, it's going.
Thank you.
So, Michael, did you get a chance to go to the town meeting?
I did.
Good. How'd you think, how'd you like that? That.
It was certainly interesting. I'll say that. It was certainly interesting.
Yeah, it would be nice to, to get it done a little quicker so we don't have to go through the multiple days like some of the other towns are. But I'm glad you were able to go. So just to go over a little bit about what we do on the finance committee, and then I'll let the board ask you some questions.
Sure.
We're responsible for basically doing the budget for the town. So typically what that does is we start in January with getting the budgets from each of the different departments. What we do is each finance committee member is assigned to be a liaison to a particular board. So they'll go in and they'll talk to like maybe like the town clerk's office or the assessor's office or the police department to find out what their budget is, what their needs are, that sort of stuff. So it's not necessarily that you're advocating for that department or anything. It's basically just so that you can, so if we have any questions and we don't necessarily have that person there, you might actually have some of the information because you've talked to members on that particular board. Well, what we do then is we typically bring in all the, we give the opportunity for each like department head to come in and talk about their particular budget in front of the committee. Again, at the end of the day, we only have a certain amount of revenue. So, when we start getting into March and April, well, especially March, when we start getting in the school budgets, which are some of the biggest, numbers for our budget, then we have to start determining whether or not, this can fit into the budget, or if we're going to have to, hold the line on a, no budget increase on this. It's basically the trade-off of sitting there saying, okay, this is what we have for, to spend. What can fit in there and what can't fit in there. Additional responsibilities that the Finance Committee has now is the wage and personnel, which would entail basically looking at the regrades of various positions as they may arise. I assume at some point we are going to have to look at the increase in the minimum wage and how that will affect all the different grades and steps for all the other departments. So that'll be stuff coming up. So typically in the off season, like after the town meeting, there's that sort of stuff to handle. But we tend to really slow down, maybe one meeting, maybe two, some in the deep parts of the summer, September, October, you might even only have one, where we're checking to see, do we have any, reserve fund transfers that we need to do? Are there any long-term goals that we're looking at? Like, for instance, we're looking at engaging in a law firm so that we can redo some of the ZBA rules. So there would probably be meetings with regards to that sort of stuff. But the bulk of the time on the Finance Committee is probably going to be from January through May, with definitely May April and May being, you know, you're going to be meeting like once a week, sometimes maybe even twice a week to get the budget done. So,
Sure.
So you have any questions before I let the rest of the board ask questions?
No, I think that was a pretty good explanation as to
Okay.
what the committee does. So that's fine.
All right.
Thank
so
you.
let me open it up. Joe,
Sure.
Cheryl, Drew, anybody have any questions for Michael? Tom's here too. Oh.
Because Tom's muted.
No, I'm good.
You're good, Joe?
Yep.
Cheryl, any questions?
No, I'm good. Just hope you join us.
Yep.
Thank you. I would love the opportunity.
Drew, any questions? Tom?
I don't think so. I looked at the resume. It seems like pretty interesting. We have a lot of people with pretty interesting experience.
Yeah, no, I think, guys, sorry I'm late. I get tied up at work. But I think the biggest thing is for us to add different perspectives. I think each of us brings a different view, and really, I mean, we're an appointed board, not an elected one. So our real job is to make a recommendation to the community on
Right.
kind of playing King Solomon, right? Well, how do you balance the interests of elders with the interests of the schools? Schools and public safety are like, I don't know, what is it, 55% of our budget? So that's where all the teeth gnashing comes in. And I think we get an extraordinary support from Charlie and from Sandy on figuring out what the options are and what the accounting looks like. But we could certainly use, we're supposed to be a board of 7. If we can get there, then we'll more consistently have a quorum, and it'll be it'll be to our benefit. I mean, we've been sort of struggling with quorum of late, and I think this will help us a lot. So we'd love to have you on the board.
Thank you.
So Michael, basically,
Charlie, is there anything we should be asking?
No, I mean, and the good news is that now that town meeting's done, you're going into the slower season, so you're not dropping somebody in the middle of January, suddenly just throwing everything at them or her.
Yeah.
There's obviously some learning to be done, but you've got time to do it. I think that makes a major difference between being appointed now in May, and there'll be some things going on during the next couple of months with line item transfers and such. But also, it gives you time to get acquainted with the process and the people on the finance committee, et cetera.
So wait a minute, you're telling me I came in at the wrong time?
yeah, definitely.
Thanks a lot, Charlie.
Depends on your point of view, Joe.
Yeah, Joe, you were even worse than me. But then somebody gets appointed last minute I think our chairman through this town meeting did a great job, given he was pressed into service like 6 weeks before the meeting. So it's part of you do learn a lot about pivoting on this committee. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right, Michael. So thank you for coming. So we
You're
can
welcome.
basically at the moment we have we definitely have one open position, another open position on 6/15, which would be mine, and then there'll be there may be another open position after that. We are interviewing 3 people tonight, so at the current time it's 3 people for 2 positions, but that might change and be 3 people for 3 positions. So we'll find out in the near future. But we need to do all the interviews, and then we'll talk as a board. We'll let everybody know because again, because of the fact that we're replacing somebody now, and then somebody's replacing me in the near future. There's going to be different times that people will be coming on. So like we'll have to pick somebody to fulfill Lauren's position, and that would be immediately in attending the next meeting if it happens before the 15th. And then the person who replaces me would be attending meetings, but that wouldn't be until after 6/15. So we'll figure it all out though.
Sounds like you have a lot of figuring out to do.
Yeah.
Oh no, don't be dissuaded. We appreciate your interest.
Oh, yeah,
and,
yeah.
We
Yes, we
can
do.
use all the help we can get.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
absolutely true, Michael. So,
Sure.
and again, the nice thing is, of course, your experience mirrors a lot of mine. So,
Yes.
I'm walking away from with the IT background, and you
Right.
have an IT background. So that kind of,
Yeah,
at
for
least
sure.
you don't lose that perspective anyway. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much,
Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank
Say
you.
hi to
Thank you.
Diane.
I will. Pleasure to meet you all.
Take care.
Have a good night.
You too.
So it's 6:17, and I see that Martha Hall has joined us. Hi, Martha. How are you tonight?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. So we'll repeat a lot of what we did with Michael. Again, my name is Frederick McGovern. I'm currently the chairman of the Finance Committee. And we're basically just want to get to know you a little bit, like why you're, interested in joining the Finance Committee, and then we'll open up the floor to any questions that the members of the committee might have. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about why you're interested in joining the Finance Committee?
I was afraid that was going to be the first question. I've been attending the town. I've been in Halifax for about 6 years now. Bought my house in 2014, right before that horrible winter. Thank you very much. And I don't know, I've just been watching what's been going on and sort of feeling like maybe I could get involved and maybe I could help. And then all the sort of hubbub around everything that went on in the last couple of town meetings. I just felt like I could help. I have a wide and varied background, and it seems like you guys need a little support. So I'm just throwing my hat into the ring to say I'm willing to help out if I can, if you
Sure.
feel like it's a good fit.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Okay. So I grew up in Rhode Island, so I've always been relatively close by. My career has mainly been around publishing, the publishing industry, but within that, I've had sort of a career that's done this. I started with rights and permissions, which is licensing for inbound content. So where you have photographs or text or videos that you're going to use in a product, it has to be licensed for use if it's third party. So I've set up systems and departments and groups that have done that in a couple of different companies. My latest job I think I put in my letter that I did that for a company in Plymouth. It used to be called PMG. It's now called Lumina Datamatics. And they had nothing. They had no department at all. And I set it up. And by the time I left 6 years later, it was bringing in $2.5 million a year, and we had 70 employees. So, I was responsible for my own P&L. I was responsible for making sure everything was bid right. I was responsible for creating RFPs for the companies we worked for. So all that stuff I know how to do. I also was responsible for building a system from scratch that didn't exist anymore to handle sort of image review and approval and licensing and data transfer and all that kind of good stuff. Our biggest client, Cengage Learning, is an educational publisher, ended up hiring me away, and I ended up being the boss of the people that were really mean to me when I was a vendor. So that worked out well for me. And so I reorganized our group, and I was over that rights and permissions department for about 3 years. I've been with Cengage for, it's going to be 8 years in August, and I was promoted into head of legal operations, and then I was promoted into the head of legal strategy, which includes the privacy department, the anti-piracy department, and the contract services department. So overseeing the contracting process, the financials around all that. And I'm in the midst of helping redesign our entire enterprise-wide, we're a $2 billion company, give or take, enterprise-wide contracting system I had to learn on the fly about privacy regulations and just got an excellent audit from a third party that we're cream of the crop for privacy, and lots of stuff that I'm really proud of in the 8 years that I've been at Cengage.
Well, sounds you've been pretty busy.
Yeah.
So my first question, of course, is you did in fact attend town meeting?
Mhm.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I know that's a favorite question that when the selectmen like to ask. Next thing is just kind of let me go over a little bit of like what would be required as a time commitment. I just want to make sure that it's going to fit within your schedule. Typically, the way it works is we really start picking up our busy season is usually January to the end of May. What we do is we start in January. Each member of the board is assigned to a different department as a liaison. We'll go in and talk to the department heads about their budgets. And then, you'll bring that information back to the main board. We then, as we get a little bit further in to like February, start bringing in department heads if they want to talk about their budget requests. We'll start getting the school budgets in probably early March, at which point we really start ramping up from, we might have been doing like, maybe in January, 2 meetings a month. Now we're up to about a meeting every week. In April, it could even be 2 meetings a week because we have to get everything done before, well, it's probably even earlier, probably late March, we're into 2 meetings a week. So that we can get to print. And then we again, about one meeting a week through town meeting. And then after that, we kind of start recessing into our normal slow season, at which point we'll probably continue to have 1, maybe 2 meetings a month until late summer, early fall, at which point it's probably just 1 meeting a month. And you'll again pick back up to the crazy time following in January. So I just wanted to see how that fits in with your schedule.
That should be okay. Do you generally do meetings after hours, like after 5?
Yes.
Yeah.
Typically our meetings are at 6 o'clock. We have been doing them on Monday, but again, that's every year we basically take a look at that and say, okay, does this date work for everybody? Again, you don't need to make every single meeting. If you've got a conflict in 1 or 2, that's fine. It's real important to try to attend as many as possible. And it's definitely important to try to attend the town meeting when people need to ask questions and that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that should be fine.
Okay.
My company just came out and said that the work from home situation is going to continue for a while. The commute becomes an issue for me just because it's rather long. But if I know what night the meetings are, I can make my work at home days around that. Even before COVID hit, I was working at home 3 days a week. So that should be okay.
Okay. I'm going to open it up to the board. So each member, we'll start with Joe. Joe, just tell her about yourself, how long you've been there, and then if you've got any questions, let them go.
Yeah, so I'm fairly new to the finance committee. I've been on since I think it was March. Same thing. I've been in town for about 6 years. In my line of work, I'm in construction. I do senior buying for our firm. So I'm dealing with budgets and numbers all day long. So I just thought it would be great to get involved in the town, that I live in and figure out how the money's getting spent and, bring a different perspective from the construction side of things, especially since a lot of our articles are stemmed around construction. So yeah, that's about me. And I don't really have any questions. Martha, great job. So hopefully everything works out.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Cheryl, your turn.
Hi, Martha. I've been on the Finance Committee almost 3 years. I actually have been living in Halifax. It was just past 3 years. I'm retired from Massasoit Community College, And being a senior citizen on a fixed income, I just kind of wanted to know how we were spending my tax dollars. And I just find it interesting. We all work well together here. And, like Fred said, there are some busy times, but on the whole, it's a good little, if you want to volunteer and want to know what's going on with the town, you'll certainly learn it here.
That's
And
great.
I don't have any questions either.
Okay, great, thanks.
Drew?
I've been on the finance committee about 2 years. It's a way to get involved in the town and meet a lot of interesting people. My dad volunteers in the library committee, and it's a way to make my voice heard on. I get to make my voice heard, I think, a little bit on environmental issues too, like solar panels or electric car charging stations.
Okay,
Do you have any questions, Drew, or you're all set?
I don't think. Nice. I don't think I have any questions. Nice to meet you.
All right, Tom, you're last on the list.
Hey, Martha, this is Tom Connolly. I joined the board, I think it was January. It's sort of been a vertical learning curve ever since. So I think you'll find the group is really supportive of kind of bringing you up to speed on what's going on. My background is I was a turnaround guy on Wall Street for about 30 years. I've been in Halifax for 9. We came up here to help turn around a biotech firm in Boston, and about 6 years ago, I bought a HR consulting firm. Cengage is actually a client of ours, and great firm. And so I think given the kind of some of the issues that we deal with, your background, Joe handles the construction stuff. Fred was handling the IT. I was handling like personnel and other finance matters, things like that. So I think each of us brings something to the table that's got a different perspective. And I think with that, you'd be a great ad and bring us some new ideas. I mean, I think our job is really to make the best recommendation to the community about how to spend their dollars. And I think the more diversity, the more diverse perspectives we can get on this group, the better. I don't have any questions, Fred. I think Martha would be a great ad.
All right, thank you, Tom. That was very pointed, and that the fact that we're trying to present a budget to the town in a way so that they understand why we're making the recommendations that we do. And that's one of the things that we'll do at town meeting, is they ask us what our recommendations are, and again, they can ask us why we voted the way we did. So we try to be as open as possible to any member of the town to explain what's going on, where their money's being spent. So.
Right. That's great. Hey, Tom, which biotech firm? My sister used to work for Biogen.
Oh, so I came up to turn Vertex around. So we left New York and came here to work on Vertex when they were switching from Hep C to cystic fibrosis. Basically, drug addicts to Irish children was the rotation we had to do. So that was my job at Vertex.
Gotcha. Okay, they're right down the street from our office in Boston and Seaport. Yeah.
Yeah, I worked on that building, moving them from Cambridge over to Seaport.
We're building their brand new building right now.
Oh yeah.
You are.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Where is it? Which one?
I think it's is it Cambridge? Where are they?
Yeah, it might be.
I think it's in Cambridge. I think it's Cambridge.
Yeah, I know it's hard. It's hard to attract scientists to go to Seaport. They want to be over in wonky Cambridge with all the other the other MIT types.
Yeah.
Martha, I do have a question, Fred, if you don't mind, and that would be your impression of the last town meeting. I mean, I've been to several. I've been to town meetings every year, but as a citizen, and I was just personally struck by the level of emotion and kind of the implied conflict and all that. So I'm just curious what your impression was of the last meeting.
Yeah, I was kind of struck by the emotion behind it too. People were very passionate, for lack of a better word. But that,
euphemism.
You watch it bubbling up on Facebook too. Like people are very. I feel like it's everything's so divisive, and it would be great if we could bring it back together. I think transparency and clarity of message is going to be important to sort of settle things down a little bit, which is kind of why I was hoping I could help. It feels like there's just this overlay of suspicion and everything, and it makes me really uncomfortable, and I don't think it's appropriate for what I understand going on in this town, and it feels like a good little town to be in, and I don't know, it made me really uncomfortable, which is part of the reason I'm hoping I can be part of the solution.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Martha, for coming in tonight. As I mentioned to Michael before, we're interviewing everybody tonight, and we'll make our decisions later on this evening. We've got a couple of different positions that are open, one that's open now, one that's open on 6/15, and one that we might be opening in the near future as well. So we've got to decide who's going to slot into what terms, basically, after this meeting. So we'll again do our vote later tonight, and we'll have Linda contact everybody. And what'll happen is typically you'll go in front of the selectmen. I believe the meeting is the 8th, where the selectmen will ask you a couple of questions about why you want to join the finance committee, that sort of stuff. They get a recommendation from the a member of the finance committee. More than likely, I'll be in attendance for that one, and then they vote to either yay or nay, basically. So
that's with the selectmen, you said?
Yeah. So Linda's going to reach out to all the candidates and basically, try to, let them know if they were selected, which term it'll be, and then again, yes, it'll be. I believe it's the 8th. If that changes, again, we can let you know.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in, Martha.
Thanks, Martha.
Okay, bye-bye. Have a good night, you guys. Thank you.
And so I see Michael O'Brien is online. Michael, you probably caught a little bit of what are some of our, backgrounds were. I know you probably heard Tom's and Drew's. Is that correct?
I heard Tom. I don't think I caught Drew.
Okay, well, let me, we'll go through the backgrounds real quick then again. And then we can get into asking you some questions. So my name is Frederick McGovern. I am the current chairman of the Finance Committee, and I have been serving on the board for the last 3 years. I've been living in Halifax since 2008. Cheryl, why don't you let Michael know about yourself?
Hi, Michael. I'm retired from Massasoit Community College. I've been on the Finance Committee almost 3 years. I've lived in Halifax just about 3 years, and I joined because I'm a senior citizen on a fixed budget. I like to be involved. I like to know what's going on with our tax dollars, and that was the reason that I joined the Finance Committee. I find it interesting as to what goes on, and that's all I have to say.
Okay. Joe?
Excellent.
Hey, Michael. So I've been on the finance committee now for close to 3 months. I'm kind of the new member. And I come from a construction background and buying as well. So I'm dealing with budgets and numbers all day long, as well as the construction aspect of it. So I've been in town for almost 6 years. Like to get involved. Thought I would bring a different perspective from the construction side, since a lot of the things that we talk about have to do construction related. So that kind of prompted me to jump on when I did, and that's pretty much me.
Okay. Drew, why don't you wrap this up? Let Mike know about your background.
My name's Drew. My work history, I did 2 internships on Wall Street. I worked at IBM for about 1.5 years, and then I moved back home, worked a bunch of odd jobs, tried to work at some solar jobs, making a difference in the environment. I joined the Finance Committee as a way to meet people and get involved in the Halifax community.
Thank you, Drew. So Michael, I understand you're interested in joining the Finance Committee. I also noticed it was probably conservation, right?
That's
Why
right.
don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you kind of went with leaning toward like the Finance Committee?
Sure. So, well, first of all, good afternoon, everybody. Mike O'Brien here. My wife and I were actually very new residents to Halifax. We've been here for about 3 months. My background is in environmental science and economics, but I've been working in private education, K-12 schools now for 10 years. I currently work at Boston College High School in Dorchester. And at BC High, I oversee our annual giving program, in addition to all of our alumni and parent programs. And so, my interest is on the finance side. My day-to-day work is really overseeing budgets. And then also about 50%, that's about 50%. The other 50% is really working directly with donors. And so relationship management, a bit of a sales aspect, and stewardship. So.
Great. So you've only been here 3 months. Did you have an opportunity to attend the town meeting or just being so new?
I've been we've had our eye on Halifax for a long time now, as many of you might suspect from this housing market. It's taken us a fair bit to get settled. So my wife and I, we got married back in October. It's taken us about 1.5 years to finally find a place, and so we're really excited to be in a home here in Halifax. And I just want to be as involved as I can. With my background in education, I feel like my interest also in conservation and environmental science. I feel like I do have a bit to offer, but I saw the vacancy for the Finance Committee, and I submitted a talent form shortly thereafter. So I've been getting the Halifax town updates for about 1 year now, but officially a resident since February.
Okay, great. So the town meeting just happened. Did you get a chance to go to town meeting or not?
I did not get a chance to attend the town meeting. I coach at BC High as well. I'm actually coaching lacrosse this spring.
Okay.
So I had a conflict that night and unfortunately couldn't attend.
Okay. So let me tell you a little bit about the Finance Committee and the time commitment, and then you can tell me whether or not you're still interested in the position. Typically, the bulk of our work we start up in January. And what we do is we have each person on the committee be a liaison to a couple of different departments. And we'll go in and talk to the department heads about their budget. And you'll bring that information back to the Finance Committee to share it so that we can get an idea of, what each department is looking to do, whether or not their budget's going to be, pretty much flat, or if they need to, submit an increase for a specific line item due to, a specific scenario. And that's the information that they would give you. So we would start that process up in January of meeting with of everybody. And we would be meeting about once a week at that particular point in time. We would then go into like February. That's when we would start having, again, we're probably once a week at that point. We're at this point, we're having the department heads come in front of the boards if they want to talk about their budget, especially if they've got an increase. Schools will typically roll in late February, early March, at which point we're probably going to switch up from, well, maybe not right away in March, but sometime in March, we've typically had to go to two weeks just because we need to get the budget set so that it can go to print in early April. So once we get back till April, we typically go back to once a week, and that will continue through the town meeting. Usually in this particular period, it's dealing with the questions that we have articles that go to the warrant that the Finance Committee can't make a recommendation on because we're still waiting for information. So if you ever get the warrant, it'll say Finance Committee recommendation at town meeting. So that's sort of the stuff that we're still dealing with in that April, May frame. In fact, it's not unheard of to basically go into town meeting and meet 30 minutes beforehand and still have a list of like 3, 4, or 5 items where we, have to make a decision. Did we get the information? Is the article going to be passed over? That sort of stuff. Once we get past May, the town meeting, we go into our slower period of time. Typically, we're going to go down to probably once a month. Again, that depends on what kind of workload you have. Finance Committee also handles wage and personnel now. So I know there's going to be, we're going to have to talk about how does that affect the existing grades and steps that are in the town for the employees that currently exist. There's also the Finance Committee recommended that a redo of the zoning bylaws be done. So we have a law firm that we've contracted with to start going through the ZBA. So there'll probably be some meetings with regards to, what we want to focus on and that sort of stuff. So again, it's the slow period is from June to January. And I expect we'll probably have like one meeting next month with it gradually ramping up when we get into January through the end of at least through town meeting. So I didn't know how that affected you time-wise with your current commitments.
Yeah, I would be fine there in terms of my own calendar. The busy season for us is really the end of May through June. We operate on a fiscal year that takes us from July 1 to June 30th. So the last 30 days of our fiscal year tend to be a little bit hectic just because we're trying to meet our end of the year fundraising goals. So that would be no problem. So you mentioned about one meeting per week, January through February, with it ramping up in March, April, and May, and then it would cool back off.
That's about right. Yeah. Again, we currently meet on Mondays at 6:00, but we revisit that every year. As we add new members on, we go, does this still work as a group? So that determination, we've got a number of positions to fill. So I assume that will be looked at again after we fill the positions as to whether or not what day of the week, what time works best for everybody. So
and thank you for the background there. Pre-COVID, were the meetings in person, or have the meetings always been on Zoom?
No, pre-COVID they've always been in person. We only shifted off to this format with COVID. I assume at some point, Charlie, we're going to shift back in again.
Well, it's going to be partially up to the state legislature and the governor. They're trying to work, I know, because they're getting a lot of pressure from a lot of communities to continue to allow as options. How much they're going to allow, nobody knows yet. That's all still being worked out. Problem is that I believe the magic date is June 15th. If the legislation hasn't been approved that allows for all remote or hybrid meetings or whatever, then we're going to go after that point to all live in-person meetings. We'll just see how that plays out. But there is a sense of urgency with the Mass Municipal Association and such. So we're hoping, it's up to everybody. If they do have that option, then it's up to each board and committee. I mean, there are pros and cons, obviously. And there's some difficulty doing a hybrid meeting in terms of the technology, in the sense of having, whether it's a finance committee or the finance committee and some people in the audience, and then people, viewing it from home or wherever. There are some challenges of doing that. So we'll see how everything plays out.
So it looks like, Michael, we haven't actually set our calendar for June yet. My feeling is probably we're going to have at least one more Zoom meeting in June, especially if the date's 6/15. I expect probably would meet on 6/14, and then at some point probably middle of July, we might be transitioning to an in-person board again. So,
Okay, great.
so Cheryl, Drew, Joe, any questions for Michael?
No, I don't have any.
No, I'm good.
No. Drew?
Nice to meet you.
All right, Tom, you're back.
Yeah. Very sorry, technical issues tonight.
Yeah.
No. Thank you, Michael. That was great. No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
All right. So as I mentioned before, Michael, we were interviewing a number of people tonight for the positions. We have one open position currently. We have a position that's opening up on 6/15, and there may be another position that's opening as well. So we need, as a board, to determine who's going to fill which terms, and we'll probably be talking about that a little bit later tonight. So,
Well, they come here or something.
Great. Well, it was really nice meeting everyone, and hopefully I get to meet everyone in person soon.
yeah. Well, thank you very much, Michael,
Thanks,
for coming
Mike.
in tonight.
Thanks,
All right,
Mike.
take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Take care.
So next on our agenda at 6:45, we're running pretty well tonight, is we have, it looks like we have a representation from Grabowski's, who wants to introduce himself to the board. Hi, Mark.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Mark Bobrowski, up here in Concord. I have a Zoom in Maynard, so I'm all around the state this evening. At about 7:30, I'll have to leave you. But
Okay.
I'm pleased to join you and to have, as the email said, a meet and greet, getting started on the recodification process.
Right.
So, you'd like
yeah,
me to
right,
tell
Mark.
you a little bit about the approach that I use?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
Please do.
I have to say, I've lost count, but I think I'm around 110 cities and towns in the Commonwealth that I've done this job for. The biggest is probably Worcester. I've done Lowell, New Bedford, Salem, Quincy. I'm doing Medford right now. Haverhill finished up in the fall. That's the top heavy end. At the lower end, I've done several towns in the Berkshires. Alford, you don't even know where Alford is, and
Yeah.
admit it. Mount Washington, the state's second smallest community, which is in the corner with Connecticut and New York, smaller than every city and town except for Gosnold, which are the Elizabeth Islands. So it's a learning experience for me. I see a lot of different things as I used to drive around the state. Now I zoom around the state. And every town is different. Every town has its own political and zoning history. And sometimes it's you can't make it up, and sometimes it's pretty standard and straight. I think in your area, I've done Middleborough, which was an interesting experience. I'm currently doing Berkeley. I worked in Rehoboth. I did Hanson many years ago, back in the late 80s or early 90s, and then a few places down on Cape Cod. So typically what I do in terms of the contractual approach is the first meeting that we will have, I will take your zoning bylaw and go through it and do what I call a diagnostic. I'm going to tell you what I like about it, what I don't like about it, suggest some things that are missing. That's usually the case. For example, you have many definitions, but you don't really define the principal uses like retail, restaurant. Those things all need to be added. And I'm going to look to you to tell me what you like or don't like about it. And members of the ZBA or the planning board or the building commissioner typically will have a lot to add in that respect. Once we've got that kind of master list of things that I need to tickle on the way through the process, I set off with you on a series of 4 meetings that are more theme oriented. The first one is everybody's job description. So site plan review, special permits, variances, the building department, and how they implement administration and enforcement. And I usually throw in non-conforming uses and structures there too, because it's probably about where 75%, 80% of your townspeople will hit the zoning bylaw, the thing that really affects people. At the second thematic meeting, I usually do the use table and definitions. I want them to fit together like a glove so that nobody's guessing what outdoor recreation means. At the third meeting, we talk about things residential in nature that everything from home occupations to what kind of a truck you can bring home to alternative residential style of development, cluster. I usually call it flexible development. Senior living, which is a very important topic these days. And then at the last meeting, we talk about things non-residential. So that's parking, loading, signage, landscaping, typically the things that are covered by your site plan review bylaw. But I want to drill down on it a little bit and go into things like noise and lights and have regulations in place for those kinds of issues. At the end of those 4 meetings, I disappear for a month usually and put a first draft together using my notes. And I do a color-coded approach to this. I years ago got really tired of somebody saying to me, well, what did you change? So you'll know what I changed because we'll decide upon it together. But for the outsiders, I create a copy in which if it's a strike through, you'll see it. And I'm accounting for everything in your current bylaw as I do this. So there's no guesswork. If it's yellow, it's new. And if it's black text, it's your old text. I can tell you right off the bat, based on my experience, that probably 75% of what you have now manages to survive. But I'm going to certainly not just be a high-priced stenographer. I'm going to present you with ideas that I think might fit in a community your size. And you'll make the choice on whether or not you want to go through the change. After the first draft, we have another meeting. We hash it out. In the first draft, if it's just something that I'm renumbering, like your floodplain overlay district, I'm not wasting the time to get that into the first draft. I'll pick that up in the second draft so we can keep progress rolling. But the second draft is all in. And the contract usually will say that I'll take you through 3 drafts and then we're ready for town meeting. But it never works that way. I mean, in Bridgewater, I think I'm on draft 13. We're not quite done yet. I think in Medford, we're now on draft 5. I just put that out last week and we're still under contract. So my goal is to get to the finish line and to give you a good product that town meeting can approve. I don't care if it takes 17 drafts, and it has in some places before. We're going to get to the finish line together. So that's the general approach. At some point, I usually recommend after the second draft that we hold some sort of a community workshop meeting, and that's where Judy Barrett will probably come in. I'll be, of course, keeping her abreast of things all along. Judy is based in Duxbury, and in my opinion, she's the best planner in the Commonwealth. She's on Nantucket having a well-deserved break with family, so I did not bother her to join me this evening. In fact, I called her this afternoon and she said, I'm on Nantucket, don't bother me, I'll call you tomorrow. So, but you'll meet her, and she's electric in terms of working in the public participation aspects of this. And I've worked with her for, we've done dozens of projects together over the past 20 years. So we know each other very well. So that's the general approach that I typically take.
So these 4 meetings, typically how long in length are they?
I'm a former law professor, so I try to keep it short because I recognize my audience doesn't have the capacity to go much beyond 90 minutes. And that, if you're fitting me into an agenda evening where you've got other things to do, I'll keep it shorter than that. But many towns set up a special night to meet with me. And you can see the number of meetings that we've got. There's 5 meetings between the diagnostic and then the 4 thematic meetings. And then it's really just feedback on my drafts. So there's a meeting associated with every new draft. So you can figure by the end of the day, you're talking about 7 or 8 meetings. I'm not in, if you want to do 2 things in one night, that's fine with me. Zoom tends to make it a little bit easier. And I would assume that you would be the best to educate me on who you think should be on the committee. I have to confess that it's unusual for me to be working exclusively with the finance committee. I don't have a problem with it, but normally I work with representatives of different committees. So if you wanted to, and I leave this up to you completely, if you wanted to invite somebody from the ZBA, the planning board, certainly the building commissioner, especially on that second meeting when we're talking about the job descriptions in the zoning bylaw, just to have them in the room to get some feedback from them would be really good.
The finance committee is the one who proposed it. The goal really is to involve all the departments. So we would hope to have representation from the ZBA, from the planning, the building inspector, that sort of stuff. In these meetings. So I would expect that it's probably going to be a separate meeting, right, Charlie? not necessarily tied into a finance committee meeting.
Yeah.
So that we
In
can at least-
Medford, I meet with the city council as a special a meeting of the whole. We meet usually starting at 5:30. I try to get them out of the room at 7 o'clock so that they can get on with their evening. And I'm doing Manchester by the Sea now as well. It's pretty much the same thing. I think up there we're on draft 8. So every town is different. You know, I once did Andover with the staff of the planning department. I was convinced that I would be there for 3 nights at town meeting. I was sandwiched between a park acquisition and a school budget warrant article. I got halfway into my introduction and somebody said, call the question. And the next thing I know, I was successfully driving home in the car. The whole thing took 15 minutes. So it's always a different experience.
Is it? All right. Does anybody have any questions for Mark here? Charlie? Tom? Anybody?
I think just in terms of a schedule, in a sense of whether it's the finance committee or you, Mark, trying to get a lead into June of getting that initial meeting set up. Players, obviously, as you all pointed out, along with the finance, planning board, zoning board of appeals, selectmen, and the building inspector would be vital on that, all that.
And does the finance committee regularly meet on Monday night?
We do.
We typically do, yes. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would suggest that we tonight just schedule a meeting for the 21st, which is the first day of summer and a good night to have the kickoff on the diagnostic. Again, I'm assuming that you probably are targeting Springtown meeting next year for this product to hit the voters. That's an easy way to do it.
Yeah.
My goal then would be to have a first draft, probably with this earliest start in the year, reviewed by you. So that in the Christmas break, I would be putting the second draft together, and then you'd have it immediately upon the new year, because I know your warrants typically want to close in April or thereabouts.
Our town meeting's May 9th.
Okay.
We typically go to press the first week of April. I think there'd be a hope that we'd have the planning board. I know there certainly would be informal public sessions, informal as opposed to formal public hearings required by law, but informal public sessions before then, but then still have the formal public hearing with the planning board at some point in March, just in case there's any last minute changes that have to go to the warrant.
That all works perfectly well. And Judy's responsibility will be to sort of roll this out for the public and gather some input from the players who are not in the game right now. For example, when I did Stoughton 4 or 5 years ago, we had stakeholder meetings. We invited the lawyers, the developers, anybody with an axe to grind. We really wanted to include those people. And I find that if you have a stakeholder meeting like that and somebody makes a good suggestion and you include it when it goes to the warrant, you're just building support for it. So it's a political campaign when you think about it. You've really got, you got to put 2/3 of the voters together. So how much change is incorporated into the bylaw? There's some risk management there. Some towns are aggressive and they want to do great new progressive things. Other towns don't change very much. Just reorganize it, make it prettier. You're going to direct me in that effort. But I will tell you right now, I warn you, don't say to anybody that we're not changing anything, because you will be changing something. I mean, your section on nonconformities, for example, I'm already saying to myself, I have to totally rewrite that. And that's where 75% of the people meet the road. So it will change. Just adding definitions changes it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's one of the things when I was looking around, I noticed that we had definitions in different sections, and I was concerned that they might differ depending on the section that it was actually in.
True, and I put them all in the back as a glossary. So the last, I like that approach, because if I need to look something up, I know to just go flip right to the back of the book. I don't have to be hunting around for it.
That's what I was looking at, like Kingston and Plimpton. It was like one nice, big, long section. They had significantly more definitions than we did. I was really quite surprised at how detailed they got into the definitions.
Which town were you looking at?
I was looking at I've looked at Plymouth and Kingston.
Yeah.
I've looked at I think I looked at Middleborough one point too. So
Well, that was Ruth Wiles. Ruth was the longtime planner there. That was her parting gift because she retired shortly after that. I would suggest, and I always like to do this, looking up the food chain, as I call it. Take a look at Easton. That's one I did. Stoughton I did as well. I've done Canton, Dedham, Foxborough in this area, in this particular area, Westwood. So there's some examples out there that you can look at as we go through the process. For example, on the use table, the bigger the town, the more you're looking at your future. So yeah. I always, like in Berkeley right now, I have them looking at Easton because someday they're going to be Easton.
Right.
Sure.
Yep. All right. Anybody else have any questions for Mark?
So Fred, the idea is that's an off night for the board, usually on the 21st.
Right.
So we would have a special meeting then. Do you want me to invite the other, members of the other boards and commissions at that point?
Well, I would.
I know you won't be here, but
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's up to the rest of the finance committee. I mean, if it was me, I would say yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I might even just call in just to see how it goes, just as a member of the public, just because I'm still interested in this stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, I would at this time, I would agree. And I think Cheryl seems like Cheryl's nodding too. Joe, you agree?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we should do that.
If it's not a regular meeting night, then I'm perfectly game, depending on your schedules, to start as early as 5:30 or 6 o'clock. It gets you out a little bit earlier to put the kids to bed or whatever you need to do. I leave it up to you. We can start at 7 or we can start at 5:30. I wouldn't start earlier than 5:30.
Maybe we do our standard 6 o'clock meeting.
I would say 6.
Yeah,
that's work for the finance committee.
Yep.
Sure.
So we'll work with Linda and get it set up.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds great. I'm going to put it in my book for 6 o'clock on the 21st of June. And I'll have a memo to you generally somewhere between 7 and 10 days in advance so that you have plenty of opportunity to read it and then ask questions and discuss it when we do have the meeting.
Okay.
I got it down to a system. So. There's only one thing to remember as we start the process. Bismarck once said, "You don't want to know how law or sausage is made." So just keep it.
Great.
Thank you. I'll see you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Charlie, I'll be in touch with you about other things. So
okay, great.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank
you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, we should circle back now. We've had 3 interviews tonight, and we currently have Lauren's position to fill. So that would be an immediate fill who would then go in front of the selectmen on 6/8, and it would actually be able to attend it again. We haven't actually decided what your June meeting is going to be yet, so maybe we should jump to that first. What do you guys want to have for a June meeting? June 14th seems to be the best option because I'm still here.
Okay.
So I can run that meeting one more time, and you bring in 1 board member. June 21st, again, you're going to have a new finance committee member come in to that meeting that's not really a finance committee meeting, but it's open to everybody else. So my recommendation is to have a 6/14 meeting. That would be after the 6/8 date for the selectmen meeting. So at least you would get the people that we recommend in front of the selectmen so that they can actually be voted on. One, again, could attend the 6/14 meeting immediately as a voting member. The other one can attend, but technically they're not a member of the finance committee until the next day. So,
and will they take care of me being appointed again, or?
Yeah, on 6/8, I believe that would happen.
Too.
Yeah.
6/8. Yeah.
6/8. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, I'll go in. We need a representative from the finance committee in front of the selectmen for this sort of stuff. So I'll go in on 6/8 as basically the finance committee's representative to basically say these are the people that we voted for, so that the selectmen can then do their interviews and make their decisions. But we need to at least vote for 2 people tonight. And then I don't know if you want to vote for an alternate in case. I talked to Deb tonight, and the bottom line is she was asking my opinion on whether or not she would be better served on the conservation committee, and because she really was more interested in the ponds, on ponds and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I basically told her that if her passion seemed to be more that way, that she's probably a better fit for the conservation committee. And I basically let her know that there's a conservation committee meeting tomorrow night at 7:00, and she could call in and listen to it. And if that seems to be better fit for her, and I think it actually is, then what I asked her is, just let us know if you want to resign from the finance committee as soon as possible. And again, the conservation committee would probably have her come in for an interview to talk about being a member of their board. I don't even know if there's an opening on conservation.
There is.
Yeah.
I thought there was, because I think Michael was also going in.
But also there's someone coming to meet with the board of selectmen tomorrow night. They've had an associate member for several years, and the Conservation Commission is recommending that person. Doesn't mean they can't have other associate members.
Yeah.
But a seat on the commission, I will see how that plays out tomorrow night with the selectmen.
Right. So getting back to it, we have to make a decision on 2, and then the board can decide if they want to basically have an alternate. So let's say if Deb calls me or sends us a resignation on, let's say, 4 days from now, that way we don't have to meet again to basically say, hey, okay, we're recommending this person. We could just have Linda go out and say, yeah, okay, attend the 6/8 meeting. We can do that, right, Charlie? Like have an alternate if there's an opening. I'm not sure how it works.
Well, I guess you could. One of the things I suggested in the email to you, Fred, was that I guess you could say, part of it is the actual appointment process. What you're doing at this point is simply making a recommendation. The actual vote would be at some future board of selectmen meeting. So you could recommend that if you're recommending person X and person Y to fill the first 2 seats, that you also recommend person Z if and when a third vacancy occurs.
Yeah. I was going to say that. I think right now we vote on filling Lauren's spot, Fred, unfortunately filling your spot, and then the third would hang in the wind, and if and when Deb decides to go, if she does, that would be what I would think would be the best course of action, because if you tried to flip flop it around, it could get a little messy if if you decide to stay. So I'm just trying to set it up so it's seamless, like basically I leave and you're all set. You don't have to worry about right
craziness or anything. So again,
and I think we've got 3 good candidates here. So to the extent we can lock 2 in and have 1 as an alternate, as Joe and Cheryl have said, I think that's the best way to ensure we have quorum and that we have a full slate going into the next town meeting. So and it sounds like I think any one of these 3 would probably accept that as a proposition. And there's certainly a learning curve here, Joe. I know you and Cheryl, I'm sure you went through it too. There's a learning curve here that says, being kind of a shadow member for a couple of months wouldn't be a bad thing.
Right.
They'd learn a boatload before they actually hit the bricks.
Yeah.
So, I think that might be a good thing to do. Even though they don't have a vote, we've got them here, and then we recommend them to the selectmen, to the board, if as and when a vacancy arises.
Yeah.
Charlie, if you don't have a problem with that, I think that's the way to handle these 3 candidates.
Oh.
Yeah, and I mean, if I, just from my perspective, I know, we're going to get into it, but, if I can, Fred, is it all right if I just voice who I think straight out of the gate?
Well, let's just do the one thing real quick. So,
okay.
So again, June 14th, is that a good date for everybody?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yep.
Okay, so our next meeting will be on June 14th, so I will still be here, okay? So now let's do Joe, who did you think should?
Yeah, I
replace
mean,
Laura?
in all honesty, straight out of the gate, Lauren's position's wide open, right? So that's a quick in right away.
Yep.
And to bring that diversity to the board straight out of the gate, my first call would be for Martha, right? And the reason I say that is it adds another perspective as far as a female goes as well, a different perspective from that end. And then to fill your spot that becomes vacant when you leave would be Michael Bennett. Right, you guys have the same.
Yes.
You guys have the same background. It's kind of a push out. He's retired. He's got some time. So for me, it would be Martha straight for Lauren, Michael Bennett for you, and then hold Michael O'Brien for that third spot if it goes that way.
Okay, so is that the motion that you want to make, or do you want to let everybody else talk first?
Yeah, anybody else can talk. I mean, I would definitely motion it straight out of the gate, and if anybody else wants to talk first, that's fine.
Does anybody want to add to Joe, or do we want to go right to a vote?
Cheryl, what's your view?
I like Michael only because I know Michael. I know the work he does. Martha, I thought was good, just a little bit.
Yeah.
She was way too much. I can do this, this, and this, and I've done this, and I can do this, and I'm sorry, but that was a bit much for me. But either way.
So Cheryl, which
She's eager. She's eager. Which Michael?
Michael Bennett.
Bennett, okay.
Yeah.
Because he'd fit Fred's spot.
Yeah.
Right.
Drew,
But again,
Drew, you have a perspective?
Yeah, they seem to make great impressions. It sounds great. I think they'll be good. Yeah, if it gets to be overcrowded at some point, maybe we would have to divide up the committee or something into two sections when we move back in. Until then, I don't know. I think they'll be good. I think it'll work.
So I'll give you my thought again. I'm not sure I'm going to vote here because it's really your committee. I liked all the candidates. I definitely thought Michael Bennett as a replacement for me made sense because we have a similar background.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Michael O'Brien, he seemed to be passionate about, he's got a finance background, but he's also passionate about the environment. And we do have a member on the board, that being Drew, who kind of covers that section. So if you went with Michael O'Brien, you're adding in a person who's got a similar, that's the area that Drew kind of fits. So my recommendations would be Michael Bennett and Martha Hall for the obvious two positions, and then have Michael O'Brien as your alternate. if he loses another member of the board in the near future. But
Yeah,
again,
I
I will let the board. So if Joe, you want to make that motion, I'll let you guys vote on it.
Yeah, so I'll make the motion to recommend Martha Hall for the immediate opening on the finance committee, as well as recommend Michael Bennett for the position coming available on 6/15, and then holding Michael O'Brien as a reserve if another position happens to open up within the next couple of weeks.
Just Linda, just out of curiosity, Lauren's position, what's the timeline? What's her term ending date?
Give me 1 second and I will try and look that up for you. I don't have it right at my fingertips. It should be pretty far off because she was one of the last people put on.
He's 6/15/2023.
Thank you. I was just going to that site.
No, okay. So it's pretty much the same then.
Same as mine.
Right.
As yours, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm then a replacement for me would be 3 years out, so that'd be 6/15/2024, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So then, does somebody want to second Joe's?
Yeah, I'll second Joe's motion.
Joe motion. Okay. So I'm going to abstain because it's not my board. You guys should be making decisions. So let's just do a roll call vote then. Cheryl,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
and Tom.
Yes.
All right. So Linda, if you will reach out to Martha and Michael, let them know that I believe the selectmen meeting will be at 6/8, so that they can come and talk with them. And Martha will be the voting member for the next meeting on 6/14. Mike, I mean, they're obviously all welcome to attend. So Michael can attend, but he won't be able to vote on 6/14. He would be able to vote starting the meeting after that.
Hey, Fred, would there, just on a quick side note, obviously we talked about Michael O'Brien being in the reserves, right? He's in the bullpen right now. If I'm a betting man, right, which sometimes I will be, I would almost tend to gather that he may end up getting appointed possibly by the selectmen's meeting on 6/8.
Right.
So does it make sense for Linda to reach out to him as well and let him know the situation, the possible
I would say the
situation?
possibility I mean, we don't have an official position yet.
Right.
If I agree with you, Joe. I mean, talking with Deb, it seems that she's leaning toward leaving.
Yeah.
But until she sends me or Charlie or Linda a resignation letter, she's still officially a member of the finance.
So we should leave it at Martha Hall and Mike Bennett.
Correct. Right.
Yeah,
we can make the recommendation as we just did that that's our alternate to cover a position that may be leaving shortly. So So you don't have to have another vote and everything else.
And I'll send out an email, like you said, Joe, just kind of explaining, it'd be great if you could come to some meetings and kind of get a look in case the position's opening up, and then you'd be prepared to step in because the committee really liked your, interview, and we just like to keep you on the line, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
So the next order of business would be, and this, we can table this to next meeting if you want. Discussion or reorganization. Do you want to do it tonight, or do you want to wait till 6/14?
I would say wait till the next one.
Okay.
Just because we'll have another member.
I agree too.
So Linda, just that agenda item will carry over to 6/14, at which point the board, including the new member, will decide who they want to be the new chairman, vice chairman, and clerk. So. All right, continuing on, we don't have much left, so we can wrap this up. So, do we have any line item transfers?
We do, actually. We have two of them. So one of them you got, and one of them I just got today. You don't have it yet, but I can run through it with you.
Okay.
So if you want to do the one you already have first with the library clerical wages.
Library clerical wages. Let's see, when did that one come in?
It was attached to all the applications for tonight.
Yes.
Right. At the very end, Fred.
Same stack.
Yeah. So all the talent bank forms.
If you want, I can just read it.
What's that? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, I just got an email from Deb. So.
Good.
Yeah.
So we have another vote out.
It basically says, it's like, however, my new schedules will my work be better for me to resign from the finance committee at this time. And so I'll forward it off, but it looks like a resignation letter to me. So.
Okay. So we should basically on 6/8 we should take all three recommendations to the board of selectmen.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
You
cool.
now actually have again. I'll forward the letter off to Linda and Charlie.
Okay.
With Deb's resignation, you actually now have the opportunity to have a second person on for next week. For the next meeting, 6/14.
Yeah,
right.
So I would assume it's going to be Martha Hall and Michael Bennett, since those are our first two. Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Agree.
All right. So that takes care of that problem. Okay. Going back, Linda, if you'll be so kind as to read our first line item transfer of the evening.
Sure. You have a request for a transfer in the amount of $350 from the library clerical wages, with the budgeted amount for this year was $171,470, and the current balance in that account is $55,657.04. The reason for the excess is due to COVID-19. The library had reduced hours, and the technology librarian resigned before the end of this fiscal year, so that left them with some available funds. They'd like to transfer the money to the data processing part-time wages. The budgeted amount for that, for the fiscal year for that, was $106,694. The current balance in that account is $17,789.66. And the reason for the shortfall that they're looking for the transfer is because the technology librarian resigned, and the library needs some help with their website between now and the end of the fiscal year. So they'd like to use that $350 towards that.
Okay. So would somebody like to make a motion to approve the line item transfer that we just discussed?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Second, okay. Let's do a roll call vote then. Cheryl?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Myself is a yes.
So I'll get that all out to you in the mail to get it, email to get it signed, and we'll have the selectmen sign it. And we're
Yes.
all set to go.
Yeah, Sandy, do you have anything to for me to sign?
We do have a payroll or two to be signed.
Okay, so I'll stop in tomorrow and sign those, and I can sign these as well.
Great.
Okay, so the second line item transfer is a transfer in the amount of $14,000. They're asking for it to come from the water wages account. The budgeted amount for the fiscal year for that was $204,966. The current balance in that account is $63,967.20. The reason for the excess balance in that account is because less overtime has been used this year than they had anticipated. They're asking for the money to go to the water superintendent's salary account. The budgeted amount for this year was $85,874. The current balance in the account is $13,556.53. And the reason that they're asking for the money is because the water superintendent has announced his retirement before the end of the fiscal year, and we need to pay out his earned vacation time to him.
Yeah.
Right. I knew that was coming.
Yeah.
All right. So would somebody like to make a motion for this line item transfer in the amount of 14,000, you said? Linda?
Yes, 14,000 even.
And the amount of $14,000.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, let's do a roll call vote. Cheryl?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And myself is a yes. So that one's all set. Okay, so those are the only two line item transfers, correct?
Correct.
Do we have any correspondence?
Let me see. The only correspondence we had was the original email from Charlie letting you know about Bobrowski coming in and if you had any opinions on that. And then there's also the one where this is older really. This had to do more with the town meeting, but it's in with this week's correspondence because that's when it came on. Just about the fact that what had been approved and not approved by Plimpton and Kingston in regard to the different school votes.
Just so you know, Kingston did approve, by the way, so we will be having, obviously, I'm saying this with the board of selectmen making the decision about this, but I expect we're going to have a special town meeting the Tuesday after Labor Day because we'll have to vote the assessment based on Kingston and Plimpton's approving it. The reason for that day, and it doesn't have to be that day, the previous week school starts, but it starts midweek. So if we try and do it the Monday before Labor Day, then we'll have people complaining that they're still on vacation. And we can't do it too late into September because we want to get the tax rate set in September with sufficient time to get the bills out by October 1st so that the payments come in on the normal November 1st date.
Sure.
Did they approve the assessment and the tennis courts, Charlie?
Gordon had mentioned to me earlier today that I don't know if it was through him or through whatever mechanism, but Kingston ended up not voting on the tennis courts because it was a separate item outside of the assessment and needed to be approved by the towns. So, next year they may reformulate how they go about looking for money for capital projects. My guess is, especially with no stabilization fund, that they will just simply bind in the capital budget request as part of the overall assessment. Of course, as I said to Gordon, both it means just as we do in terms of balancing what capital projects we're going to fund, they're going to have to figure out which capital projects are their priority, and then also balance that against their operating budget as to what's a priority. Because unlike us, where we generally rule of thumb have said operating budgets, recurring revenues, capital budget, free cash. They don't, outside of their E&D account, they don't have that luxury. So they're going to be challenged by saying, do we want a teacher or do we want a tennis court, for instance, or whatever the terms are.
I do know that the stabilization fund request in Plimpton failed.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens next year with that.
Right.
The only other two pieces of correspondence we had were one, Fred's resignation, as you all know by now. And two was just the reorganization of the Board of Selectmen. So Gordon is now the chairman, Troy is now the vice chairman, and Ashley is the clerk. And that's it for correspondence.
Cool. Then last thing on our list, there would be any public participation. Anybody from the public?
Gordon's here. I don't know if he has anything.
Gordon's here and Chief Chavez is here. That's pretty much it for the public. So I guess I'm not hearing anything, so we'll move on. So I don't think we have anything else to discuss, do we? As Mayor Ryan?
I just have one thing.
Sure,
I just touched base with Farley just yesterday for the charging stations for the town hall. So he said, yes, he reached out to Guardian Energy. So I think it's just a matter of, I mean, he was the one who I think had the Guardian Energy and Natural Grid sources to begin with. But I think it's just a matter of getting a hold of them, like, can they commit if it's 4 to 6 charging stations in the town hall? Can they commit to it, and when can they commit to it? And then if Guardian Energy can't, then maybe moving on to the next one. But I think that's just a agenda thing, an agenda item to do. Right.
All right. Anything else that anybody wants to talk about? Okay, hearing none, would somebody like to make a motion to end tonight's Finance Committee meeting at 7:28 p.m.?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. We'll do a roll call vote. Cheryl?
Yes.
Joe?
Joseph?
Joe?
You're muted.
Yes.
Yes. Why keep us here longer, Joe? Drew?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Okay, myself is a yes. So good night, everybody, and I'll see you on 6/14. And again, I'll be attending the selectmen meeting on 6/8. So
okay, cool.
Yeah, everybody.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Thank you all. Good night.
Night.
Good night. Have a good weekend.
You too.
You too. Bye.